A little story about Adele's life. The first memory she remembered was the view of the sky above the harbor, when the seagulls were flying high there. At that moment, she saw two boys her age who were playing chase. When one of the boys happily ran away from his friend's chase, he was then confused when he heard someone warn him not to run around because he might get hurt. The person who warned him was Adele, who was currently sitting and looking at the sea. Adele told him that he had to walk while looking around so he wouldn't trip. Adele then smiled gently at him after saying that. After that, Adele then returned to looking at the sea, towards the ships that were flocking to the dock. Adele had quite a tragic childhood. Her parents fled from their hometown to escape the war. They took refuge and settled in the trade city of Oldek. But their situation here was just as bad as in their hometown. They were exploited, deceived, and in the end, getting a piece of bread for daily meals was very difficult, until one moment, her father suddenly bought her a lot of delicious food. Seeing Adele, who was eating the bread she bought, her father with a trembling tone then called her. He said that he had to go first and asked her to wait here for a while. Hearing that, little Adele said that she understood. After that, her father then left there. His back looked very lonely at this time, but his heart suddenly felt doubtful. He then looked back, towards his only child. He continued to look at Adele amidst the passing townspeople who passed by, until finally, as if making a decision, he then ran away from there. Seeing that, little Adele thought that her father must have gone through a lot of hard things, although Adele at that time was still a child, but she seemed to understand what his father did to her. She then continued to eat the bread while looking at her father's back. But, even though it was an expensive sandwich, something she usually could not afford to eat, but strangely, the bread tasted very bland in her mouth at this time. After remembering that, Adele then stood up and muttered that it was time to leave. Meanwhile, when Adele walked away from there, the boy she had warned earlier, fell to the ground while running. After being left behind by his father, Adele then lived in Adeldro's orphanage and became an orphan. In the city of Oldek, the only good virtue that must be have is diligence. And that also applies to children. The orphanage where she lived was supported by the Telos Church and was much better than other orphanages. They allowed children like her to rest during prayer time. They said they were servants of God. One day, she picked up a discarded lute at the docks and learned to play hymns. Thanks to that, he was allowed to stay in the church longer. He also got an extra break from the grueling chores. Then one day, when the atmosphere in the orphanage was bustling because of the arrival of the high priest, Verdio, that day was a turning point in Adele's life. Verdio's arrival received a very enthusiastic welcome from the merchants in the city. They all gave him gifts and congratulated him on his entry into the holy city. One of the merchants said that their merchant guild would double their donation, and begged him to let them join the holy city too. Verdio gladly accepted the gifts they offered. He hypocritically said that they shouldn't have to do this. Even so, he thanked them for their concern, but, when Verdio was about to accept the gifts they offered, he accidentally nudged the candle beside him. It caused the candle to fall and set the area on fire. They then panicked when they saw it. Verdio too, because he was very close to the fire. His clothes were quickly burned by the fire before he could react. Seeing that, they worriedly asked if he was okay, but, in the middle of their panic and worry, a bucket of water suddenly splashed at this time. The water splashed towards Verdio and soaked his whole body. Verdio was dumbfounded by the sudden incident. It turned out to be Adele. While dousing the fire scene with a bucket of water, Adele thought of the flames had spread to the display. It could have been a disaster. Verdio could only stare dumbfounded at her actions. He was really shocked at this time, seeing several buckets of water neatly arranged there as if it had been prepared. Verdio asked her if she had known this from the beginning. Hearing his question, Adele said that she saw it in her dream. She always had such dreams once or twice a month, but she never saw her own future. Hearing that, Verdio immediately went to her and held her hand with both hands. Adele was then surprised and confused by his actions. With tears on his face, Verdio said that it was a great honor for him to be able to find a vessel destined to stand at the pinnacle of the church like this, the saintess of Telos. After that, in just one night, Adele got everything she never dreamed of before: so many servants, luxurious food, and the respect of a high priest. Although she has to pray every day, learn etiquette, and reduce sleep hours in order to understand her studies, but such a life is much better than living in poverty. There are 3 baptisms she received, first from the Holy Emperor, Archbishop, and the last from the High Apostle. She inherited the will of the holy city and engraved the blessing of the sacred law onto her body. With each rite and blessing, her divine power grew stronger. all the rituals were complete except the sacred mark. At that time, Adele was in the church balcony and opened the window to look at the stars, and for the first time, she saw her own future. A very scary scene appeared that made her eyes widen with fear. After that incident, Adele then resigned from the position of saintess. Verdio, who heard that, was of course very angry with her, but Adele remained adamant about it. She thanked him and the church for all the kindness she had received so far. She said she would serve the god of Telos in another way, but not as a saintess. Verdio sighed disappointed when he heard that. He realized that it was no longer useful to persuade her. Verdio then explained to her about her future vision ability. Her future vision ability was a celestial magic that could bend the flow of time, magic created by God of Telos himself, the power manifested based on her own instincts. That's why they named her saintess. But what annoyed him was that her talent was too great. It seemed that now she had begun to be able to see her own future. Year after year passed since Adele resigned from her position as saintess, even though she had resigned as saintess of the Telos order, but she did not leave the holy city and remained there as the guardian of the holy fire. Every day, she played the lute all night, because every time she fell asleep, she would definitely see her future again. Her heart shuddered with fear every time she remembered that scene. In the future she saw, Verdio looked anxious and frightened. He said that the plan had failed. In order to appease the saint dragon, a being capable of devouring even gods themselves, they had to offer the saintess as a sacrifice. Adele closed her eyes and felt worried every time she remembered that scene. You can hear many things in holy city of Telos. The world began to regain its peace thanks to the outstanding leadership of Emperor Clol, but in a peaceful world, no one sought divine guidance, and the influence of the holy city faded away because of it. Verdio, a high priest and businessman, knew exactly what it would take to overcome that, the fear of the end times, and the miracle of God. By awakening the saint dragon sealed on the island of Arkan, he would be able to instill fear in everyone's hearts. Right from the start, Archbishop Verdio's reason for seeking out the saintess was to be offered up as the sacrifice that would reseal the saint dragon, and that saintess was her. By running away and resigning her position as saintess, she thought that destiny could be stopped, but, years later, as if proving the power of fate, they again found someone suitable and made her a saintess. That person was Clarice. Although she did not have the talent for celestial magic like her talent for sacred magic was very large. With her grace, character, and talent, she seemed to be born into the world as a saintess. That night, Clarice met her in the church balcony after a tiring day of study. She asked her what it meant to live a pure, white life. Adele felt very worried about Clarice at this time, but on the other hand she was also hesitant. From the bottom of her heart she wanted to tell Clarice the truth, because as a result of her running away, Clarice was the one who ended up becoming a saintess. Therefore, she mentally told her to run away, and to answer Clarice's confusion, Adele then sang a song to her. Better to die in filthy water than live as a blank sheet. The green mist of the Denkin wetlands, the golden plains of the imperial capital, Cloiran, the red rooftops of the trade city of Oldek, the turquoise knowledge of the land of knowledge, Sylvania. As Adele sang the song to her and Clarice, who was enjoying listening to the song, Adele in her heart kept asking her to run away. She begged her to run away from here, but, no matter how much she tried to beg Clarice from her heart to run away from here, it was useless. Because Clarice would not understand. Night after night, she tried to move her heart with songs that described freedom and romance, in the hope that she would leave this place. But, every time she saw a smile on her face, guilt pierced her chest, because she knew, everything she said was hypocrisy and deceit. Then, before dawn arrived, Adele decided to wander again, and that was the beginning of her becoming a bard. Her final destination was here, at the Sylvania Academy, when the chapel building appeared in her sight. With limping steps, Adele walked there with her body condition covered in blood. The students who saw were certainly shocked to see her condition. They asked about what happened to her. At first, she didn't know exactly when the Saint Dragon would be resurrected, but now, she could predict when something happened exactly. She could even find her way to the chapel with her eyes closed. When she approached the chapel, Apostle Taldarek, who was guarding at the entrance, always said to her, "Outsiders are forbidden to enter." When she heard that, Adele then rolled up her sleeve and showed him the sign of the blessing of the sacred law. Taldarek was certainly surprised to see the sign of the blessing of the sacred law on her hand. While they were stunned, she then entered the chapel. There, she saw the Telos apostles who were already on standby in battle formation, and in the center of the room, there was a box containing Velbrock's ancient Fong necklace. That was the item they used to resurrect the Saint Dragon's soul. Adele had tried to persuade Verdio and the apostles again and again, but they never listened. The fact that they didn't even bring Clarice from the Trix Hall showed that they probably thought that the Saint Dragon was just a being from a fairy tale and would not threaten them. It was their arrogance that later destroyed them. When their plan succeeded and the Saint Dragon was successfully resurrected, they then frantically sent someone to the Trix Hall. In the end, what they were really looking for was a saintess who could save them. They needed the sacrifice of a saintess with enough divine power to satisfy the Saint Dragon's hunger. If the saintess gave her life on the life sacrifice formation engraved on the floor of the chapel, Velbrock could be sealed again, and all of that would end now. That's what Adele thought at first. After thinking about it, Adele then knelt on the life sacrifice formation. The formation then reacted, and Velbrock's ancient Fong necklace then floated in the air. The necklace absorbed everything in the formation and seemed to accept her sacrifice. Adele's body was constantly wounded and bleeding from the violent reaction she received, but Adele comforted herself that this was okay, although her life was indeed short, but it was not without meaning. Everything was built on lies. But Clarice still looked at her with those shining eyes, although Adele was ready to die at this time. But what she did not anticipate was the blessing of the sacred law that tried to protect her from the necklace, and pushed the celestial magic within her to the limit. Powered by the divine power that Adele has, celestial magic then wrapped the world's time in time loops, again and again, with the number that she could no longer count. Time continued to spin, and spin again. In the previous time loop, she was surprised by the appearance of Clarice. This incident was different from the previous time loops, but now, the divine power she had was almost exhausted. Adele estimated, her divine power may only be enough for 1 or 2 more time loops, at most 2 or 3 more times, and when her divine power finally runs out, this time loop will also end. With a limping step and the wounds on her body getting worse with each time loop, Adele then stepped her feet once again into the chapel. But, something different then happened. Before she could enter the chapel, someone suddenly stopped her, with a look that looked like a desperate person. Adele then confusedly looked at that person. That person was Ed. Ed asked her if she wanted orange juice or just cold water. Adele was really confused why Ed was here.